listening to The Breakfast Show here on Faith FM with myself, Skafy, and I have Lindsay here with me, co-hosting this program. And on the production side of things, we have producer Letitia and producer Shell as well. We have been talking about the story of Joseph, how God is at work often or always in the toughest situations of our life. God has a plan. God is doing something. We perhaps cannot see. Perhaps it's messy. Perhaps we have no idea what God is doing, but He is at work and He is doing something that will benefit those around us, that will benefit the plan of salvation as a whole. We don't have we will one day have the benefit of looking back these stories like we are looking back at the story of Joseph. But for now, what remains to us is to trust in Him. And in today's show, we're going to be covering a number of stories. One of them, the miraculous deliverance of 20 pastors who were attempted to be murdered. And it backfired. But it backfired in a spectacular way. We're going to be looking into that. This is a story fresh from Ukraine. And we also have here a couple that after 50-odd years living together, they decided to formalize things and get married in their 90s. We're going to be looking into that story. Lindsay is going to be bringing up a heartwarming story. And we also will have an interview with Michael Cook, an interview that producer Shell made with him, where he is going to be teaching us, giving us some ideas, some suggestions, some plans on how to talk about creation with our friends who believe in evolution. So this and much more in today's show, so you cannot miss it. We are now going to ask producer Tish to serve us a brand new quiz question.
Who wrote this line? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Who wrote it? Yes, 2 correct answers here in the studio. If you also know, please let us know on 0491 064 669. Who wrote this line? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Thank you very much, Tish. This is a great psalm, a fantastic passage of the Bible just to read or even to commit to memory, to learn it through a song. And I want to learn more about that story, Lindsay. So what happened there? Who decided to get married after a long time living together?
Okay. So first of all, I have some questions for you.
All right.
How long have you been married now?
I have been married now for 11 years.
11 years?
Yes. So this year, 2026, we will complete 12 years.
There you go.
In, let me see the date on August 3rd. That's my anniversary date.
I'm glad you know it.
Yes.
I'm sure your wife is glad you know it. Oh, wow. No, congratulations. That's such a good amount of time.
Yeah, it looks like it was yesterday.
Yeah, wow. Now, do you know what is the approximate average length of people's marriages these days?
Oh, that is a great question. I have no idea. I would say, so if you take all the people that are married and then you divide that by the number of years that they have been married together, I would suggest maybe 20 years.
It's actually much lower because of such a high divorce rate.
Oh, really? Much lower?
Yeah, a lot of people get divorced within like a year or 2 years or 5 years.
So shock me. What's the average
Unfortunately,
tenure of a marriage these days?
It's like 7 or 8 years.
7 or 8? Oh, man, I'm above the average already.
You are already above the average. You're already winning. Please keep on winning.
Yeah, wow, that's such a badge of honor. Now I'm going to tell this to my wife. She'll be happy. We're married for longer than the average.
Just keep it up. So, yeah, no, unfortunately, a lot of marriages don't make it very far these days. And I think that probably just says a lot about our culture and probably about our preparation for marriage as well.
Preparation for marriage, just the general view of marriage as well.
The narratives around marriage, like, oh, it's a ball and chain and all these types of things, like you lose your freedom or there's a lot that goes into marriages falling apart very early. But I want to share with you...
So just a quick question. Do you know if that statistics comes from what? Is worldwide? Is Australia or is America?
I'm probably guessing it would at least be American.
Okay.
Yeah, they tend to come from there first and foremost.
Interesting.
But this story I have to share with you today is about a marriage that has lasted for over 70 years.
Wow.
You were saying 50 odd, it was actually 70 odd.
Amazing.
So this couple from a little town in Virginia in the US, they fell in love at the age of 20 and 21.
Okay.
So, and they just could not wait to get married. So they actually eloped. They didn't have a big wedding ceremony with all their friends and family. They just went eloped. They were probably wearing blue jeans at the time, and they were just in some little courtroom somewhere, and they just got married. So their names are Harold and Frances Pugh, and they are now 90 and 91 years old. And they are still so in love. And so they decided to actually finally have a proper wedding ceremony. They decided they were going to renew their vows and invite close friends and family to come along.
That's very cute.
And yeah, so they have now had 70 years of marriage, and they're in their 90s getting properly married, properly having a wedding anniversary, a marriage vow renewal. And so some of the people who have been there have said that they were traveling, riding roller coasters in your 90s, hosting Bible studies in your home. We see you, a pair blessed by God with years of life and the wisdom to take advantage of every opportunity to live, the officiant said. And everyone was in tears as this was happening. Like, it's such a beautiful testimony of love and of God's love in a couple.
What a great idea.
To maintain that love over 7 decades to this point.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And wanting to renew their vows in front of everyone.
Yeah.
That is such a beautiful testimony. To
Why
have
not?
a lifelong companion like that, to share all of your experiences, to help each one another growth. I actually read this phrase once by Timothy Keller. Timothy Keller is a very famous pastor. I'm not sure if he is alive still.
I don't know much about him personally.
Yes,
so.
Tish, can you search for me if Timothy Keller is still alive? And I have the impression that he died not too long ago, but I hope I'm wrong here.
Doesn't he come out with a new book every couple of years?
No, so he used to.
Okay.
But Timothy Keller said he came. Yes.
I've got an answer. He lived from 1950, but he did die in 2023.
That's right. So, yes, it was very sad because he wrote some amazing things. He actually had a book about marriage. And what I like about Timothy Keller is that he says the purpose of marriage is to, from God's perspective, is for the husband to help the wife grow in her character and vice versa.
Okay.
So it's about faith building, character building, really help each other to grow stronger spiritually and towards eternity. And I just really love that concept.
I remember reading a book on marriage, like probably 5-6 years ago now, getting ready to one day get married, hopefully. And it's by a guy called John Eldridge and his wife Stacy. They wrote this book together. But John writes
I have read stuff from him.
Yeah. So I think this one was maybe Wild at Heart, potentially. Okay. And he basically says that marriage is a divine conspiracy, where God brings two people together in order for them to be sanctified through marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, growing. And it's probably a little bit more of a spicy take on what you just said with the husband and the wife helping each other to grow. But he calls it a divine conspiracy. And I feel like there's probably some of our listeners out here who are thinking more along those lines. Yes, I don't know why I'm with my husband or why I'm with my wife, but maybe it's a conspiracy that God has brought us together to help us to grow.
Very good. Wow. Love it. That's a great conspiracy theory right there.
Oh, dear. Yeah. So this is such a beautiful story. I hope that each of us here are able to have long-lasting marriages. Skafy, I hope you and your wife have a marriage that lasts over 70 years.
Amen.
Or into eternity.
Yeah,
or...
I hope it will last into eternity, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because my wife is also my best friend.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh.
Very good. I love that story. I actually got here, I pull out one of a quote from Timothy Keller on marriage. This is what he says, and I quote here: "To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial.
Yeah.
To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God.
Yeah.
It is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense, humbles us out of our self-righteousness, and fortifies us for any difficulty life can throw at us. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
To be loved, because there's that, one thing for you to be known, but not to be loved. That's not a good, nobody wants
That's
that.
rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be loved, but not to be known, it's just like, yeah, nice. I love it. It's because I love everybody in the world.
Yeah.
Like people like in India, they're not feeling that love in any way, shape, or form. They're not experiencing it.
Yeah.
Because, okay, Skafy, good on you. Thanks for that.
Peace, love,
But
and
to be
brown rice.
known and loved, and this is what, when I got married, I remember one of the things about marriage, one of the thoughts that and this one, I haven't read it anywhere, I think that the Lord gave it to me, is the privilege of loving someone like God loves. Because when you think of it, God loves each one of us in such a special, such an intense way that it is as if there was not any other person in the universe. And we only really get to experience that, to love someone from a certain point in time all the way through eternity and back with marriage. Because even our children, at some point, our children will leave home. They'll build up their own families. And guess what? It's going to be back to the husband and the wife.
Yeah.
So it is a relationship like no other. This is why it's so special. And God has such a special heart. God uses the analogy of marriage more than any other analogy to talk about his relationship with us, with Israel. So I am a big enthusiast of marriages. When I was growing up, I shared that when I share my testimony. I heard a lot of that idea of, hey, don't get married. Married is this, married is that. It's like a ball and chains. No, enjoy your life. But I said, you know what? I wish I could have been married to my wife, but even earlier.
Yeah.
I'm glad when I did. I wish I could even have started earlier, because marriage is like, if you have a marriage and that marriage has at its centerpiece the love of Jesus, it's the most beautiful experience that I have experienced as a human being. It's really amazing.
That's beautiful.
So get married in Jesus. That's the most important thing.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
And we are now going to give the answer to the previous quiz question. Who was the author of Psalm 23?
That would be King David.
King David. Thank you very much, Tish, for that quiz question. And I'm actually going to bring a very interesting story that I found online. This is a story, is a testimony by a man named Kobe Barrett. He is a filmmaker, entrepreneur, and former U.S. Marine Corps captain. And he led infantry and sniper platoons in the Middle East and the Pacific Rim. And one of the ministries that he was involved in was a few times he would fly to Poland and help to bring medical supplies from Poland to Ukraine's first responders.
Okay.
Because, the first responders work is one of the most important. After explosions, after missiles, they are the first people to go into harm's way to try to rescue people from the rubble, from, whatever chaos is there. And they need supplies, all kinds of supplies. Particularly medical, bandages and medications and so on. And he says that every time that he visits Kiev, he always attends the same evangelical church. So there's this evangelical church that he's there, and he says that it's vibrant, it's amazing, it's a growing church. They have an amazing cafe. They try to help their neighbors with aid. And he says that every time that he goes there and he listens to the music, he cries, even though he cannot understand a single word that is being sung. Well, what happened is that September 27, that church in Kiev was celebrating an amazing milestone.
Okay.
They were celebrating 32 years of ministry. And to celebrate that, they were hosting a pastor's conference.
Okay.
And they were also going to be dedicating on that Sunday their brand new 4,500 person worship hall. which
Okay.
they built in the midst of war. So I think you could even classify this almost like as a very large church with a very large
Yeah.
hall. However, earlier that Sunday morning, Russia sent a wave of Shahid drones. So these are the Iranian-built drones. They're the kamikaze drones. They basically find a target and they explode and they cause massive damage. And on that Sunday morning, they sent a wave of multiple of these Shahed drones, and which made them think that the attack was actually very intentional and targeted for this mega event that the church was throwing, because there's no military installations in like kilometers and kilometers away from them. They're not in a military area. It's just a purely civilian area in Kiev.
Yeah.
So they thought, look, this is very targeted. And there has been a number of reports of, in the war of between Russia and Ukraine, there's a lot of Christians that do report a religious persecution, particularly against Protestant Christians that are not from a Russian Orthodox background. Actually, this man, Kobe Barrett, he is also a filmmaker, and one of the documentaries that he just released is called "A Faith Under Siege." It's talking about Russia's hidden war on Ukraine's Christians. That documentary is available to be watched online. You have to pay to stream it, but if you'd like to get the link to it, I can send it to you.
I'm curious about that, because didn't Putin put out a call to American Christians just a few months ago for them to just come and move to Russia? Did you remember hearing about that?
No, I haven't heard about that one.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
I wonder what is going on.
Yes. Well, what happened is that miraculously, one of the drones that was targeting the accommodation building where 20 plus pastors were sleeping detonated, but it fell in the wrong place, a couple of meters outside of the building. So it ended up exploding in the parking lot.
Okay.
And nobody got injured.
Good.
A second drone hit the children's playground, and there was no one there, so nobody was injured.
Yeah.
And the third drone was witnessed by a parishioner, a lady named Svetlana, and she saw the missile hitting the building right next to her, the church building right next to her, the newer building. And for some reason, that drone explosives failed and it didn't explode.
Wow.
It just hit and crashed.
I don't know about you, but this feels like an angel force field around this place. And it's like
100%.
bumping the drones off or making them not explode properly. Just like, no, you're not coming in. You're not exploding the building. You're just going to do it outside where it's not going to hurt anyone.
Exactly.
That feels like what's going on here.
Exactly, and this is what starts to backfire here, because what Kobe Barrett says that in America, if it's snowing a lot outside, they cancel church services. If the power goes out, they're canceling church services. And I think that here in Australia, sometimes, if things are not 100% going to the plan, a lot of church services can be canceled as well. But in Ukraine, they do not cancel church services for anything. Actually, on that very same day, after 3 failed drone attacks to the church, by 11 a.m., thousands of people were coming to the church to celebrate their new inauguration. Not only that, during the service, they made an appeal for baptism. 200 people came forward wanting to be baptized.
Wow.
On that day.
That's amazing.
Then the following weekend, Kobe was there in that same church again, and another 50 people came forward to be baptized. And he says that it was one of the most powerful worship services that he has been a part of.
There's a revival taking place.
It is a revival taking place, and this is happening all over Ukraine, across all kinds of Protestant churches. That they've made surveys, and the majority of Ukrainians say that they have grown spiritually since the war has started.
Interesting.
So it has been backfired, because look at that the service in the following weekend, the senior pastor handed to Kobe a piece of sharp metal, and that piece of shrapnel came from one of the Shahid the Shahid drones that lodged into the new worship hall. And so basically what they do, like Russia, they pack like pieces of metal, metal shrapnels inside of the drone so that when they explode, this metal can be expelled into all directions and it increases the damage that it can cause.
Yeah.
So, particularly to people.
Yeah.
Since 2022, Russian forces have murdered at least 52 Ukrainian Christian leaders and damaged or destroyed 650 churches.
Wow.
Entire denominations have been banned, and in occupied areas, believers have been killed, tortured, or driven underground. Actually, that lady, Svetlana, that I mentioned to you, that witnessed the Shahid drone hitting the church but not exploding, like just a few meters away from her. Her husband, Victor, has actually a story to tell. He was kidnapped once by Russian forces, and he was kept 25 days in a cold, dark, damp basement.
Oh, dear.
Not only was kept there, but he was beaten with fists. He was beaten with feet, baseball bats, repeatedly shocked with a taser. And during his imprisonment, a Russian Orthodox priest came and tried to cast demons out of him simply because he was a Protestant Christian.
Wow.
His testimony is also online. If you'd like, I can send you the link for that.
That's so wow.
So this is talking about a very dark side of the war in Ukraine, a side that we often don't see. How part of the strategy of Russia seems to be trying to hit into people's hopes and into their faith by trying to destroy their access to God and to the church, to the Bible. However, the unintended consequences is that it is backfiring, and more Ukrainians than ever are finding their faith in Jesus, are wanting to be baptized, are reporting that their faith has grown since the war have began. So, the bombs aren't breaking the spirits as they were intended to, but instead they're driving people to pray, to lift them up as believers.
I find this element kind of really surprising. Like, I'd never really heard of Orthodox Church being like part of a persecuting power before. Have you ever heard of that? Like
No.
in recent times, at least, like maybe thousands of years ago, like something might have happened, but I've never really associated any of the Orthodox churches to behave that way.
Look, the thing is, my reading of the Russian Orthodox Church from the actions that I have seen is that it is a church that is very subordinate to the state.
Right. Okay.
This is why it's so important to have separation between church and state, because you have two issues. When you have a church that is subordinate to the state, you see things like, for example, the Russian Orthodox Church justifying acts and never condemning violence or anything like that from a state perspective. So you have that, and I believe that a lot of Russians, they see this and they despise it. They say, why are you as a church selling yourself as a church leader? Not as a church institution necessarily, but the church leaders. Why are you selling? So you also have a problem when it's the other way around. When it's the church controlling the state and using the state machinery and apparatus to persecute those who disagree with you. This is why the best configuration that we can think of is, hey, the state is independent from the church is independent from the state. Each one, they can talk, they can interact, they can suggest things to one another, but they respect their individuality, they respect their independence, and they're not mixing the two things.
Yeah.
Because
It's very important.
It is, absolutely. It is a tragedy. And I believe it's unfortunately damages the name of God when people look at churches that are so in bed with their state, whatever that is, that they realize, hey, this is all this is all just for politics. This is all political. This is not
Personal
for
gain
faith.
and power.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
You are listening to Faith FM. You have me today, Shell, and today we are going to be doing our interview with someone from Creation Ministries International. We have Michael Cook with us, and he's going to be sharing some fantastic principles on how you can talk to evolutionists and what things you can say to intrigue them and to help them to have a broader understanding of creation. Is that right, Michael?
That's right. Good morning, everyone. It's Happy New Year. It's fantastic to be back with you again. So, yes, we thought this morning maybe we would just look at the topic of how do we share with people, maybe friends, families, workmates, neighbours who hold an evolutionary worldview and believe that we are misguided or delusional if we believe the Bible.
Right.
So how to engage in good conversations with them.
Yeah, I guess to shape arguments, but without arguing.
Exactly.
Yeah, so where should we start? What should we do?
Well, I think it's really good to know. Often, maybe things people feel unequipped and maybe don't even want to share because I'm not sure what I believe. But I think ultimately it comes back to realizing it is a spiritual battle. Often people push back because of the spiritual things. If God is real and the Bible can be trusted, then maybe I have to look at my own life and work out whether I want to, involve a God in that. And so often we fall back to our default fallen position of not wanting to have a God in our lives. So that's one thing to be aware of.
Right.
So I think, but it's important to be respectful and prayerful when you engage with people. As it says in 1 Peter 3:15, in your hearts uphold the Lord Jesus as Lord, but always be ready to give a testimony or to give a reason for the hope that's within you. And that's what it's about. It's sharing your own testimony. But then, of course, people will say, well, you believe the Bible, but what about dinosaurs? What about fossils? What about et cetera? So that's when you can then have an opportunity to just engage in a respectful dialogue with them. And there's various ways you can take that down a track that is positive and respectful.
Right. Like, give us some examples.
Okay, so one of the good things is I actually say often when I speak for Creation Ministries, recommend to people, if somebody says to you, oh, do you believe in evolution? Don't just say no. Okay. People go, what? But the reason for that is if you say no, that's what they call a closed answer. It basically means to that person, okay, I don't want to talk about it. My mind is fixed. You're a delusional or you're anti-science or something. If you actually instead say, oh, that's a good question. What do you mean by evolution? Can you sort of define what you mean by evolution? And straight away that's showing you respecting them, but also puts them on the sort of back foot, so to speak. They have to then define what they actually mean by evolution. And so straight away you've got a conversation going without saying anything.
Right.
Yeah, so it's good if then they go, oh, well, animals changed. And you go, that's good. And then you start to talk about what type of change there is. So you can actually, by using respectful questions, have the dialogue advance naturally by just listening and getting them to share why they believe in evolution and what they think the evidence for it is.
Okay, I like that. Where would you go from there?
Okay, then if they actually then start to come back, well, then I say, what's your strongest evidence for your evolutionary worldview? And they might go, well, what about radiometric dating and so on. So that's where if you're equipped with some understanding, knowing our website, creation.com or Creation Magazine, and there's some excellent tracks and videos you can be aware of. But as you go down the track of this line of discussion, it's important to now realize that we're talking about worldview, not about science. Okay, so I'll just explain what I mean by that. So if, for example, somebody has a fossil and they say, well, this is millions of years old, we can actually say, okay, we don't disagree. We have a fossil. We can look at it. We can weigh it. We can measure it and so on. So no one disputes the facts. No one disputes the evidence we have in the present.
Yes.
The disagreement is actually about the history behind that. So when did it form? How did it form, etc. So that's where your worldview comes in, what we call worldview, the way you see the world. And this is shaped by your education, by your worldview, your culture, your upbringing, what you've read and what you've studied and so on. So that's where the disagreement between people who believe in biblical creation and God and people who maybe are evolutionists and atheists is that we have a different view of history of the world.
Right, exactly.
And that is actually not that's not a scientific thing. It's actually a historical disagreement. So we need to come back to which history makes more sense.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So if we think we believe there is no God, or we believe that the earth is millions or billions of years old and we have a fossil, therefore straight away we will interpret that fossil based on our long age and slow and gradual interpretation. But if we believe the Bible and believe the account of the flood and so on, then we will actually have good grounds to say, well, the fossil would have formed quickly, very quickly, only a few thousand years ago. And, so two very different worldviews focused on the same evidence.
And providing an example of that happening or something like that could be good. So is there some good cases of fossils forming quickly that someone could just quickly use?
Yes, there is. I mean, we've got some fantastic articles on rapid fossilization, including in recent times. And we now know from operational science, which is done in the lab, you can actually form a fossil very quickly if things are buried quickly and in the right conditions. And talking just months or a few years to form a fossil that looks exactly like one that is apparently millions of years old. But what you can do, you start to look at fossils. We can actually talk about dinosaurs, and I'm sure we've talked about on your station about dinosaur soft tissue. That's one of the major issues that confronts evolutionists in the millions of years.
Yes.
So what we're doing is we're finding dinosaur fossils that are not fully fossilized, and they still have detectable degraded blood cells and hemoglobin and DNA in them, which cannot be millions of years old. So that's a good way to say, well, how old are the fossils really? When the evidence from science shows that these things cannot be millions of years old, we start to see that we have evidence that starts to counter the millions of years idea.
Okay. Very good. I recently heard from, I guess, someone who just assumed that Christians, or had spoken to a few Christians, or had heard, I would imagine that from somebody else, that this is what Christians believed, that dinosaur fossils are a test of our faith because we know that they couldn't have really existed, and so that's just a test of faith, which just is such a scary thing to imagine that anybody could have said something like that. How do we make ourselves sound intelligent and understanding of science in situations where you're talking to someone who just thinks that, Christians are stupid and ignorant and refuse to see logic?
Well, that's a really good question. But the thing about, dinosaurs, absolutely, we have no problem from a biblical and scientific point of view that dinosaurs existed. From the Bible, God created the land animals, which dinosaurs were, type of land animal on day 6, and they would have multiplied and been represented on the earth. And then, of course, the flood, most of them were wiped out, along with most other creatures, apart from those taken onto the ark. So dinosaur representatives would have gone onto the ark, obviously very small ones, just young juveniles. So we have no problem with that. And there's many, many accounts of cultural encounters with dinosaur-like creatures, or dragons, as they called them back in the day,
yes,
all around the world. So there's good evidence for dinosaurs did exist. Yes, they are extinct now, but there's no reason to say that we have a test of faith because the dinosaurs didn't exist and the fossils are fake or something. That's completely not reasonable or biblical or scientific.
Yep. Okay. So where do we go then next? What other arguments can we tackle?
Well, the other thing is, another one which is really good, is we're looking at erosion in millions of years. So the Grand Canyon, which I've been privileged to have been to 3 times, including one amazing tour when we rafted down the Colorado River and hiked and so on in the river itself.
Wow.
And so what you've got is a huge hole in the ground. And the standard interpretation is that the Colorado River slowly eroded that canyon over millions of years. So that again is where the worldview comes in. Did a little bit of water over millions of years erode the canyon, or did a huge amount of water in a short time erode the canyon? And when we actually look at the evidence, the rock layers, the erosion and so on, it's very, very strongly supported by the idea it was a post-flood deluge that actually carved that canyon out through relatively soft sediments. So we see a huge amount of water in a short time. So that's a better explanation scientifically and biblically for the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, okay. Good. I love that. That's a good argument to go to.
And there's many other really good evidences from geology. If your person you're talking to is interested in geology, the idea of landforms and rock layers, and it's amazing how many evidences there are for the flood around the world. The coal seams, the flat blankets of rock that go out for thousands or hundreds of thousands of square kilometres that could not have been laid down slowly, gradually through rivers and in the bottom of seabeds. We're talking something had to be catastrophically massive to ever do that amount of geological work.
Yep. So where would be the best, place to start to try to really reach somebody and put questions into their mind?
It's really good to, again, come back to, okay, what's your best evidence? Why do you perhaps believe the evolutionary worldview? And of course, we have to totally understand that we live in a evolution-saturated society, don't we? If we're taught from childhood and through school and university and on TV and Sir David Attenborough and National Geographic, the millions of years, slow and gradual. The present is the key to the past. Evolutionary, we're just saturated with it. So very, very understandably, people would take that worldview on. It seems well supported. The evidence seems to point to it. So it is hard to swim against the tide sometimes, but when you start to boil down to what's actually observed and what it means, we find that the case is very flimsy.
Yeah. Okay. So have you had many conversations like this with just random people? And how does it usually flow? Does it go well? And how can we make it so that it is an interactive conversation that's just going to drop a couple of seeds and not turn into something that's maybe more than we can handle as non-scientists and people who don't have as much knowledge as you? How do we make it so that we're just dropping a few seeds and moving on without burying ourselves in things that we don't know?
That's a really, really good point. Thanks for that, because we can often dig ourselves, especially if the person you're sharing with is maybe more academically qualified in the sciences and so on, and we're just a layperson who doesn't really. What you can do is just get them thinking and say, that's interesting. And if they counter with something maybe you're unsure of, or you say, look, that's a really good point. I'm not sure actually, but I'll get back to you. And that's where you go to, like creation.com, you search there and you'll find, again, huge amounts of many resources, that video, facts and downloadable files and so on, that you can actually go back to them with an answer. But also really encourage Creation Magazine. If you're a subscriber to Creation Magazine, we have so many uplifting, encouraging, well-written articles that help to just pull down these ideas. But I think you just got to go down the track of just, respectfully go. If you find you're getting bogged down, you can just say, look, hey, we had a great chat, thanks for that, and come back to them. Maybe it's an opportunity to keep the door open. Don't keep on going until you find you've lost the case, or you find you've bogged down or become argumentative. That's not helpful. So it's good just to keep the dialogue going in a friendly way. And when you feel that maybe it's reached an end for that time, just say, thanks, that's great. Have a great day or whatever. So I think it's important to just gauge it in a respectful way. When it's positive, that's good. And when it starts to slow down, then maybe call it a day.
So we've only got a minute left. What, resources? So definitely go to the website, grab some articles, do that sort of thing to just really ground yourself so that you have a little bit of a base. Is that pretty much what we should do?
That's right. And we've got a whole range. If young people, especially, we're finding that social media, CMI has a real push into getting onto even TikTok, Instagram, all those ones, Facebook, etc., YouTube. We have huge amounts of resources, short videos for young people that engage them. So go onto creation.com, search our media, search our social media channels, and just share something on your Facebook post or whatever. Send somebody a link to an article, send somebody a link to a YouTube video. There's lots of ways you can feed out without doing any hard work yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. It's always a blessing to have you guys on the show. And what a great way to start the year with some great advice on how we can share the truth with people about creation versus evolution.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.